Welcome back. It's good to see you, and I'm glad you were able to find your registration work again. And I sent out the notifications. Welcome back. Oh, let me good to see you. Turn that thing off. There we go. I don't know. Sometimes it does the feedback, and sometimes it doesn't. I don't know what makes it do that because I haven't changed the settings on it. But it's good to see everyone again today. I so look forward to this time together. I so look forward to spending time with Francis, Lucille, and any of them. I would love to have met John Klein, but I'm happy to have we have the actual person with us next week. Mark your calendar, July 20th. Francis will be here in person for an hour, and it's so great that he is willing to do that. And then also mark your calendar in November. I'll start a Rupert Spira book study, Being Yourself, with his newest meditation series, and I'll be doing it for Rupert for his book study group starting in November. And we'll have a rotation of co-hosts. I'll send an invitation out for people that would want to be a co-host for that. And I'm hoping that Jenny will also be a big part of that. And look forward to that as well. And Rupert will come on for our first meeting, and he'll come on periodically in person, just as Francis is doing. So things are moving up in the world for us, and I'm very happy to be invited to participate in as the host for these book studies for Rupert and also for Francis with his book. And Jenny, thank you so much for being a co-host for this book study and for all the previous things that we've done together. It's been invaluable. And thank you all for being here. We're looking at chapter 13 this week, Peace, the Universal Container. And I'm not sure what page we'll go to, but Jenny, where would you like to start?
Well, let's start at the beginning with the first question: is meditation an activity? And in this teaching, when we talk about meditation, we usually mean sitting in silence without intention, just allowing all our thoughts, perceptions, and bodily sensations to come and go as they want to. But Francis explains that we shouldn't regard this as a practice. He says, all kinds of subliminal efforts and tensions may come to the surface in this silence. However, when these efforts and tensions appear, they are, of course, felt as our present experience. Therefore, they may fool us into thinking that sitting in silence in this way is actually an effort or attention that we are doing or creating in that moment. In fact, the opposite is true. We're not making any effort, and it is precisely because of this that efforts and tensions of which we were previously unaware come into the light of our awareness. And that's all that needs to happen. If we were to do anything about these efforts and tensions, then that would indeed be an effort, and we would be adding another layer of effort. So I think that's very clear, and that's a very important message, that meditation is effortless.
It's very interesting. It's just like we talked about last week. The person that starts the journey gets erased. The meditator that that has this meditation, it somehow just merges into the experience of meditation.
Yes.
So there's no longer a meditation happening. It's just you're being yourself.
Yes, there's nothing happening. Just whatever passes through awareness is allowed to pass through awareness.
Yeah.
There's no doing of any kind.
Yeah. It's really interesting to contemplate or to even reflect on that idea, because meditation seems like boring, and at first it kind of, maybe it is, but then when you have that direct experience of the self, of the meditation as what you are, it's no longer that idea of boring.
Yes, yes.
Very interesting. And if anyone has any questions or comments, please use the raise hand feature. We haven't had anyone come on to visit in that way in a while. If you feel to do it, you can feel comfortable to either raise your hand or use the raise hand function. Put a Q in front of your question in the chat, and we'll go there. And you're very much welcome and a part of this collaboration that we're doing together. The next question is on the top of page 190. Is this why it is said that there is nothing to do? And I find this also a very interesting idea, that we need do nothing, because the mind wants to say, oh, I'm just going to sit in a lotus position, or I need to go into a cave like Ramana Maharshi or one of the sages. I need do nothing.
And Francis explains that as a person, there is nothing to do, because there's no such entity as a person. The apparent person is simply an activity of thinking and feeling. So by definition, it can't actually do anything. But he says, yet at the same time, feeling that one is a person is one of the subtler ways in which the ego, the activity of thinking and feeling oneself to be a person, a separate entity, maintains itself. But of course, when we understand that the person is a thought or a feeling with no independent volition or capacity for action, then the question of doing or not doing doesn't arise.
Right, right. And it is the idea. I like when people have a real issue. Sometimes you get caught in the bodysuit experience, and a very helpful way to look at that, to no longer join it as your identity, is to watch the body self with your name on it, like a movie, like the Bill movie or the Jenny movie or the Elizabeth movie or whatever. Put your name as the movie, and then you're just the awareness of the experience.
Yes, yes, you're just witnessing what is happening, and yes, that can take a lot of the difficulty and the feeling of having to do out of the whole situation.
Yeah. He says at the bottom of page 190, there's a question that says, what do you mean by transparency? I'm not sure where did he reference transparency in that previous?
Well, he didn't, and I think what's happened is that these are really transcripts which come from a retreat, and earlier in the day, he would have been doing a yoga meditation. And he would have said something like just feel the body as transparent, see the body as transparent. So I think the question is referring to his yoga meditations, in which he suggests making movements that are of the body that are transparent in the sense of being free either from volition or from resistance. As Ellen also uses the word transparent in exactly that same way in her meditations, particularly which involve movement. And he says something very interesting. Page 190, he said, when we want something, we often maintain its opposite. We reject, we resist what is. For instance, if we want something new to happen, it is often because we don't want what is currently happening. So the desire and the resistance are part of the same movement. Whenever there is this sort of volition, there is also resistance. And he goes on to explain that if we stay rooted in the presence of awareness, then this resistance can't become established. And in that way, we purify the body-mind of the sense of separation. We need to start by becoming aware of the resistance. And I wonder, perhaps we might like to try a short meditation, a sort of yoga style meditation, something I imagine that might be a bit similar to what had been done earlier that day in that retreat, and then see where that takes us.
Let's try that. And if you just came in, we were just reading from the top of page 191 when we get back. So you want to introduce that?
Yes, okay.
Great.
So let's start by sitting comfortably and just close your eyes and allow thoughts and feelings and bodily sensations and perceptions of the world, which should be mainly hearing just at the moment because your eyes are closed. Just allow all of those to pass through your awareness just as they will. Don't give anyone any particular attention. Just allow everything to float through. And if attention is caught by anything, then just let go of it. Just allow it to carry on its way, returning to the presence of awareness. Now just allow the sensation of your right hand to come to your attention. Don't focus on it. Just allow the sensation to come to the fore in awareness. And see that sensation has no boundaries. It has no weight. It has no solidity. It's just a little tingling feeling which is floating somewhere in awareness. It's transparent. Now allow your right hand just float gently upwards, up towards the ceiling. Don't do it. Just allow that movement to happen. Movement's entirely transparent. There's no one doing it. It's happening by itself. Just moves upwards towards the ceiling. Visualize it carrying on upwards to touch the ceiling. And visualize little brushes on the end of each of your fingers. And just stroke the ceiling with those brushes like you are painting the ceiling, but very, very gently, very, very delicately. No one doing it, it's just happening. Completely transparent. There's no solidity to your hand, the arm. There's no weight. There's no border. Very gently, just allow the hand to float down slowly back to your lap. No one doing it, no one moving it. Still transparent. No one controlling that movement. Any control is just an afterthought. So I hope that gives a feeling for what he means by transparency. And it's something that we can use during the day whenever we feel there's solidity to the body, and we can use that idea, and just sit down for a few minutes and try the same experiment again and see what difference it makes afterwards.
That was very powerful imagery and experience. Of course, I had one eye open so I could see if anybody came in the room. So I could let them in. But did you know that there are birds that sleep with one eye open while they're sleeping with the other eye closed?
Yes, yes.
I was doing the owl thing. I think owls do that. Thank you for that, sharing that meditation, Jenny. It was really quite helpful. And in that last, if you came in late, we're on page 191, the middle of the paragraph in the third paragraph in the middle of the page. It is a gradual process in which the body is purified of tensions, and this in turn dissolves the impression that there is a doer of our movements. And Jenny, you did that brilliantly. That instructing us that we're not the doer. It's just happening. When the movement is transparent, there is no longer an apparent doer. It is enough to be aware of the resistance without having to get rid of it. I think that might be, I think that should be on a billboard.
Yes, yes.
That would be worth the $5,000 to put it on a billboard. And then put Miss Lucille at the bottom. Who's got $5,000? No, I'm kidding. But wouldn't that be fun to be driving down the road and see a statement like that, Francis Lucille? Maybe that's something I'm seeing in the future.
Yes.
The next question, are there any questions, any comments from anyone on that? I see something. That was great. Yes. That was great. Thank you, Rana. Amazing experience, even though I only joined in the course of it, Michaela, as I don't meditate on my own. Yeah, thanks. A lot of people don't, and that's pretty natural, pretty normal. But it also helps when someone says, let's meditate. The other thing is, if you've followed Rupert for any amount of time, Rupert says meditation is not something that you do, it's something that you are. So just pausing, just for a moment, an instant, pausing as awareness, that right there is a meditation. You're a living embodiment of the meditation experience.
Yes, yeah.
You are meditation. So that's okay if you don't do it. You can't help but be it.
Yes, well, you can't do it. If you're doing it, then it's not meditation.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
That's good clarity.
Mm.
The next question is that why when I leave after doing these movements and start to move, I feel disoriented? I'm
Yes.
not sure does that question follow the last
Yes,
answer?
it follows the last one. And again, it's about the yoga meditations, that when those stop and everyone gets up and they go and have lunch or whatever it is they do, then the questioner feels disoriented. And I can understand that, how that happens. I think so. I mean, we did a very short meditation, but I think Francis's meditations are quite a lot longer than that. And so you're in that effortless, non-doing presence of awareness for much longer. And I think, and with your eyes closed, and I think when you open your eyes, then and suddenly all of the world comes in, and you see so much movement and everyone around you moving, and I think there's disorientation. But he says, usually instead of making the required effort for whatever we have to do, we do more than is necessary. As a result, there's a surplus of effort during the activity, and this surplus remains after the activity is completed. This residue of surplus effort creates the impression that there is someone doing it. It is the ego. So I think it's the returning to that and returning to that surplus effort, which is the normal for many people, that brings the disorientation. But you know, it's another way we can use the yoga in our normal daily lives. It's something that I've done for some time. It's automatic for me now, and that is that everything you do with a minimum effort. When you open a door, when you close a door, you do it with the minimum effort needed, and you just feel that, and doing it with love, allowing sensing the love between you and the door. It sounds ridiculous, but it is like that. Everything you touch, you touch with love, and then the effort will be absolutely minimal. And that's I hesitate to describe it as a practice, because it's something that's it's such a beautiful way of living, and it's worth trying anyway.
Well, you described it in a beautiful way. It feels like I want to go stand up and go walk over to the door and love the door.
Well, you try it afterwards, Bill.
I'm going to go downstairs and love my hammer or my
Well,
tractor.
yes, but you must love your hammer, because I mean you're using your hammer to build all the things in your house. It's an extension of your body, isn't it? Your hammer.
Yes.
And you love the wood that you're building things with. It's love for all of those materials and all of those tools.
Yes. It goes with, I interviewed, or I hosted Isira. She's from Australia. For those of you that are from Australia, I hosted her presenter series last night, and she uses these same ideas of what she would call inclusive love. She calls it inclusive love. I think this really connects with what she calls inclusive love, everything.
It sounds like the same thing. Yes, I think so.
Yeah. Yeah. It's beautiful.
Mm.
Well, thank you for presenting doors in a new way for Bill Free. You know, I have a builder background, so I've installed many hundreds of doors. Funny. So on page 192, the second after the second paragraph, the question is, does spontaneous action come from what does it say?
From totality.
Totality.
Yes, I think the question really means is does it come from the universe as a whole, rather than from a person? I think that's what the questioner is
Right. Okay.
getting at, really.
Okay. Yes. And then he says, yes, ultimately, all actions come from the totality. Spontaneous action comes directly and knowingly from the totality, whereas unspontaneous action comes from the belief and the feeling that I am a doer, and that I, this doer, exist before, during, and after the action.
Yes, yes.
That's you know, I like the way he put that in that first sentence when he says spontaneous action comes directly and knowingly. Because as a spontaneous action, if you pay attention, if you're in attention as awareness, you knowingly are in that experience.
Yes, yes.
That's pretty cool.
It is.
Because it identifies the experience actually identifies the seer.
Yes. I love his use of the word spontaneous because it feels like freedom. You know, so spontaneous action comes from our freedom, and it's a lovely word.
Yeah, yeah, it is. I was the first time I came across this word, spontaneous. I was interviewing Muji's partner, Krishnabai, in Portugal, and in that interview, she was describing to me how Muji moves on the land, on the ashram, in a spontaneous, what would she call it? Spontaneous, auspicious way. And that's true. He if you go to his ashram, you would see it almost looks like a Zen. Uh, it looks like you would imagine a Zen uh, paradise, a Zen, because there's koi ponds and there's there's sacred kind of spaces to where you just feel to drop on your knees and be. It's just
Yes.
it's and all of because I actually interviewed Muji asking him about the land and the planning of it, and none of it's planned. It's all done in that spontaneous, auspicious kind of a way.
It's beautiful.
It
Yes.
is. It is beautiful. Oh, telephone.
Sorry about that. Richard will
Uh,
sort that out.
that's a nice ringer.
It is right.
He
Normally
said,
we're able to turn them off when we're in Gloucestershire, but this phone doesn't have a method of doing it, so it's a bit
"Oh,
of a
I see."
problem.
Rick says, "Yeah, love the screen." Let's see, what are we talking about? Love the screen. What is the screen, Helen? And Rick says, "One reality means all actions are rooted in the totality, knowingly or not. Knowing this, the difference." Yes.
Yes, that's right. And Francis goes on to explain how the feeling of separation is localized in the body, but this localization tends to remain hidden. We just don't notice it. But as soon as we do notice it, then it's very easy to see this is not me. This is just a bodily sensation. And I remember there was a yoga meditation from Rupert from many, many years ago when he suggested visualizing being located outside the body and asked us to contemplate what it would feel like to live there. And that was a very interesting exercise. Um,
So visualize the space that
visualize
the
that
body is lying in.
no, it's visualize that whatever you feel is me is located outside of the body.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
You're the
Uh,
space. You're the space. You are the space that the room is in or that the body is in.
yes. Or even to visualize that you're in a particular part of the space, 6 feet in front, I think he suggested. Visualize that you are located 6 feet in front of the body. So, but
Okay.
yes, so ultimately, you feel that you're not located anywhere, but before that feeling arises, it's useful to notice. Oh, I feel I'm located in my chest, or I feel I'm located behind my eyes. Just to notice where you feel you're located, and then when you've noticed it, to just see, oh, well, that's just a bodily sensation. So definitely that's not me. So actually, I'm not located there.
Mhm.
And the more you do that, the easier it is to feel this complete lack of localization, which is really the end point, because that's the end of feeling any sense of separation, is
Yeah.
the abandonment of any kind of localization.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I can, when I look around the room that I'm in, I can easily assume the space and then dissolve the walls and the ceiling, and I'm the space around that the trees are in, and,
Yeah,
and
yes,
everything else.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
Well, that's a good place to spend your day. Just spend your day starting with the sky and then extend that out to include all the stars and the planets.
Yes,
There you are.
yes, yes.
Uh, he says in the last paragraph, top of the page 193, it is only in the twilight that we think we see. Oh, okay. He's talking about a snake. We do not see. So the bottom of page 192 starts with, we do not see these localizations clearly, and so they remain in a twilight zone and fool us into believing that we are these localizations, that we are the body. The analogy of mistaking a rope for a snake is a good example of this. If there is complete darkness, we see neither the rope nor the snake. In full light, we see only the rope. It is only in the twilight that we think we see the snake. Likewise, these incompletely seen feelings in the body create the illusion that there is someone there. And this in turn gives credence to the notion that I am a separate person. They maintain it as an apparent experience. The moment I the moment I completely welcome these sensations, it immediately becomes apparent that they are out there, in the open. How then could I possibly be any of these sensations? So he's saying that the moment that we completely welcome the sensations, the objects of experience, it immediately becomes apparent that they are out there in the open. And he's talking about included as what I am, right?
Yes, that everything is myself, but it's seeing them and seeing the mistake that we've made in identifying with them and identifying with the localization.
Yes. Yes. He says there's another question. There's a long question. The fact that other perceptions, such as sounds and sights, often come in familiar patterns, compounds this sense of being a person. For example, when looking at one's face in the mirror, the reflection is almost the same each time. This repetitive pattern makes a convincing case for the experience, for the existence of a separate entity. So if I am not an individual, why is it that these experiences have such a common thread?
So he explains that the fact that there's a pattern of experience that repeats itself doesn't imply that we actually are the pattern. And he says every morning when we go to the bathroom, roughly the same scene presents itself, the toothbrush, the towel, and so on. But we don't infer from this that we are the bathroom. So yes, it's a false conclusion that the person was coming to, but there's a broader point than this, because the universe is just a complex set of ever-changing patterns. That's all there is to it. And what we call the laws of the universe, like the law of gravity, are just patterns. And Francis refers to them here as habits. He says everything we see is more or less a habit. The body itself is a habit. Molecules dancing in a certain way. So, yes, I mean, the existence of patterns doesn't tell us that we're a separate entity.
Yeah.
He says something which I found quite strange, which says the toothbrush exists only when perceived. And that's really an idealist perspective, which Francis doesn't normally take, and he particularly doesn't take it, hasn't taken it in his recent satsangs. But I don't think I think maybe he's not implying an idealist view here, and maybe he's saying that the toothbrush only exists as a toothbrush when it is perceived. In other words, the dividing of reality into separate objects is an act of perception in itself. I don't think he can possibly mean that nothing exists outside of perception, because he said quite clearly in recent satsangs that we have no reason to assume that there isn't existence outside of perception. But I think I thought that might be something that it would be nice to check with him next week when he comes on, and just get him to comment on that.
Yeah, that's a good one to get an answer to.
Yeah.
I paused when I read that myself and went, "Oh, wow. You mean this pen doesn't exist until I look at it?"
Yes, that's a Berkeleyan view. Bishop Berkeley put forward. He was not exactly the original idealist, but close.
Yeah.
The one that's most famous, really, is starting the philosophy of idealism, and he sort of got round the problem by saying, well, actually, God would see it. If you're not seeing it, then God's going to be seeing it. So maybe it's still okay. But he was a bishop, so he has that perspective. But Francis, I know, doesn't take the same view as Bishop Berkeley. He says, well, Bishop Berkeley could be right, but his emphasis is very much on not knowing, and not knowing whether an idealist or a realist view is a closer match to how things really are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it's a good one to ask, and anyone that wants to pick that up and ask Francis next week, just jot that down. It's at the top of page 193. And the next question at the top of 194, is there only one viewpoint? There is an inference that there are many. He says, if we are open, and I like the idea that he starts his answer with, if we are open to the possibility that the consciousness from which the question comes and the consciousness from which the answer comes is one and the same, then it will turn out to be so. This is a great mystery. The revelation that consciousness is not personal could truly be called enlightenment. If we understand that everything is in consciousness, then this consciousness is actually experienced as the substance and the substratum of everything we know, feel, or perceive. However, as long as, this is almost like putting a but. However, as long as we still believe or feel that this consciousness is personal, we are not knowingly in the realm of consciousness And what is being mistaken for consciousness is, in fact, still the personal mind.
Yes. And it's very common to confuse consciousness and mind. And in doing so, we automatically come to the conclusion that consciousness is personal. And the idealist approach of equating consciousness with some kind of universal mind still leaves us with that feeling that consciousness is somehow mind-like. And as Francis said once to me, what evidence do you have that there is a universal mind? What do we know of universal mind? So I think in my view, the idealist model makes seeing the universality of consciousness a lot more difficult. It's much easier if you really separate out consciousness from mind and not make any kind of assumptions that consciousness is in any way mind-like.
Yes, yes. I totally agree, because then you become, it's easy to assume the position of the activity of experience, and you identify then as the activity or the object.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I like in the last paragraph on page 194, where Francis, he says 3 times within that one paragraph that we have to be open.
Mm.
He suggests many times here that we have to be open. So it's just a willingness to be open. We have to be open to the possibility that we all have this consciousness in common. So that's one, open to that possibility, that we are this same consciousness. We have to be open to this miracle, to this different dimension, which is the dimension of the sacred. So this dimension of the sacred is almost like pointing to a different experience.
Yes. He says that we can use reason to see that there are no valid arguments or facts to substantiate the claim that consciousness is personal. That's as far as we can go with the mind. But then we need to go beyond the mind into that further dimension, and then that leaves us free. It leaves us. It leaves us open to prove that it's impersonal is beyond reason.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And if we are open, it's almost like a statement that's saying, I'm willing to be willing. And the mind that is the is the Maya, the mind that thought that it was separate and in charge is no longer in charge if we're willing to be willing.
Yes. Yes.
There's an openness, there's an open, spacious will to know the self.
Yes. And openness implies that we don't know. We're open to whatever insight arises and whatever intuition arises that we don't know. We're not clinging to any beliefs. He says all that is needed is to be free from old concepts. That is important, to see that they don't have any credibility, leaves us in an attitude of not knowing, an attitude in which we have forgotten everything we knew, in which we have nothing. And that is the meaning of being poor in spirit. We know nothing, have nothing, and want nothing. And when he mentions poor in spirit, Francis is probably thinking of a sermon by Meister Eckhart, who's a 13th century German theologian, and he produced a beautiful translation of this. I can put a link for people on the chat, because this really is, it's quite short, but it's really worth reading.
Okay, that's the Beatitude also. That was one of the,
Exactly, yes.
yeah, that was one of the Jesus Beatitudes I remember in my Christian days. There's a question on the board that says, why do manifestations appear to be habitual in nature? Is God habitual, or is this just a mind interpretation? Well, let's take the first question. Why do manifestations appear to be habitual in nature?
Well, they do, because everything conforms to patterns. If there weren't patterns, then it would be very boring. If you've ever heard white noise, that's completely random sound, and it sounds horrid. It doesn't sound like music. So somehow the universe works according to patterns. Manifestation happens according to patterns, and really patterns are the same as habits. But there's, in all of those patterns, what is so beautiful, which you come across in most fields of science, is that there's always a possibility for outliers, for something a little different to happen, which doesn't quite correspond to the pattern. Almost does, but doesn't completely. Everything is statistical. Everything has a probability attached to it. That patterns are not absolute. It's only in mathematics that the patterns are absolute, and that in a way, it's Francis talks about beauty as being one of the characteristics of consciousness, of reality, and beauty is only going to arise in the context of pattern of some kind, but pattern that is free, pattern that is unconstrained, because there's always this possibility of something a little different occurring. It's what's so beautiful about the whole of nature and the whole of the universe.
Yeah. And it is the second or part of that question is God habitual? I would say creation, the perfection of creation, our consciousness itself is habitual because it's changeless.
Yes.
It's the changeless present that you can, that's always reliable. It's a totality of what is always present oneness is reliable, and you could call it habit, but I call it extension of creation.
Yes. Yeah.
Great question. Thank you. And being open, which includes the possibility of seeing things from an almost inhuman perspective. Yes. Yes. Tayana says, loving this all so much right now. Yeah, me too. Thanks. What a wonderful blessing to step in, to be steeped in one shared heart together this way. Thank you, Bill, Jenny, everyone. My heart is flowing over. Mine too. Thank you. Thank you for that comment. And this is lovely. I love these kinds of satsang experiences. Jenny, do we have time for more? We have 5 minutes, 6 minutes.
Yes. There's a bit more about freedom. And questioner says it seems that the last freedom we're left with is the freedom to choose a thought or not to choose it. And Francis asks the questioner, well, do you choose your thoughts? And the reply is, well, they come, and I choose whether to welcome them or not. And he then goes on and demonstrates that all thoughts, including the thoughts which appear to choose, the choosing thoughts, actually come to us unchosen, which is interesting.
That's really, really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's no, I mean, do you want vanilla ice cream, or do you want some with chocolate bits in it? I think I want the one with the chocolate bits in it. Who chose that? Bill the bodysuit, or was it chosen for Bill the bodysuit?
Oh, so the universe chooses it, and even science, neuroscience, with all the experiments with fMRI, and even actually before fMRI, they showed that actually the choice happened before the person is actually aware of making the choice.
Yes.
And John Klein referred to it as the clown coming on to take the bow after the ballerina has finished her performance.
Yeah. We think this bodysuit is having this experience right here. And this is with your name on it. It's got your computer in front of you. But who are you?
Yeah.
Who are you to claim this? You have no name. You're nothing. How does that feel? Pretty good.
Yes.
Good. Let's see. I think we're at the end of our time together, and we'll pick this up. Please formulate your question for Francis for next week. He'll be on live. Really looking forward to that. There's an interesting. I interviewed Francis probably I don't know, maybe a year ago, and it was on Dialogues and Awakening. It was a little preview that I did for one of the conferences, and Francis says there are no accidents. The fact that we're speaking, that we're having this conversation, this is not by accident.
Yes.
And there's no accident that you're here right now in this experience. And I felt like that was a powerful statement that I carried many times after that interview.
Yes.
There's no accident that you're here right now. We could all say that.
Yes. We're all conforming to a pattern, and that pattern has brought us here. And part of that pattern is the search for what we truly are, and the sharing of that understanding when we discover it.
Yes. I love the comments. Thank you, Tayana. Consciousness is having this experience through the apparent form of the bodysuit. Yes.
Yes.
So, could it be seen we are joined one in the nameless? Yes, absolutely. Nothing is random or accidental. Nothing. Yeah, this has been great. Thank you all for being here. This has been an inspiring satsang that we joined together. Thank you all for being part of it. Thank you, Jenny, for your awesomeness and your meditation today. My love to you and Richard. And all of you, And thank you for your comments on the chat board. And we'll see you all next week with Francis Lucille. Bye, everyone. Bye, Jenny.